with you. This has been a great day. I've been here since the first session this morning, and I've seen there's been over 100 participants throughout the day, and it's just been a lot of fun. There's been some great presentations. I've enjoyed so much of what's been said. We've had a lot of things to think about, but there are also a lot of practical. I could spend my 20 minutes just decompressing some of the things that have been shared. For example, I loved Sarah. Sarah shared some things that you guys have been doing with your team very deliberately. Jean, I did the breathing exercise. That was a lot of fun. I don't know who did that. Andrew, brilliant Andrew, what he shared about what they're doing with their team, their remote teams, and some of those things were really actionable. So I want to kind of dive into, can we start with a poll? I want to ask you guys a question real quick. And the question is simply, how many virtual meetings are you typically in the week? So if we can bring up that poll, how many typical virtual meetings are you in a week? And I want to include professional and personal. So, because we're doing a lot of family stuff. A lot of times we can't even connect with our friends now. Yes, and true. We heard Andrew talk about virtual pub crawls, or what do you say, a virtual happy hour or something like that? That's what we call them here in the States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. We're almost up to 70%. So if we could just a few more votes, Kirk, and I think we'll be near 90-ish. So if you haven't voted yet, if you could vote, that would be fantastic. A few more seconds. We're almost there.
All right.
And we'll go for that. If we could close it, please, Holly.
Yeah.
Let's see where we got then, Kirk. Okay, we've got very close, actually, very close in the middle. 37% between 20 and 30, 36% between 11 and 20. And then we've got 90% 1 to 10, 8% 31 and beyond, which is, wow, even that is a big number. 31 and beyond is crazy.
Right? It's out of control. So that's a lot. So and this is probably not going to go away. If we all get vaccinated, I still think the virtual thing, this is a genie that got out of the bottle. It's not going to go back in the bottle, right? So I'm using Zoom synonymously with web, with Skype, with Teams. So if you hear me say Zoom, I'm talking about all things virtual, because there's a lot of different platforms out there. Some are more popular, and all of them have different features, and they're all growing in their ability to offer those features. I was on a call the other day. I signed up for a call. This guy was hosting a call out of New Zealand, and I've been collecting cool things people do on Zoom. And I've been collecting those, and I thought, well, this guy was offering 10 things. So I logged on, and I was joined by 250 people. But as I logged on, this is what I heard. I was logged on 7 minutes early, and for 7 minutes, this guy played happy songs. So we weren't greeted by silence. Everyone who logged on to this webinar logged on looking for ways to spice up their Zoom meeting, to change things up a little bit, to lead in change and to make change feel good. And so while we logged on, a typical Zoom meeting or a typical team meeting, sometimes we log on and we're just kind of waiting for people to show up. But a lot of organizations and individuals are doing really fun things so that they're creating an environment and a culture that invites people to come early, and not just to come early and be there, but to participate. And so I thought on this chump change thing, I thought I would just share with you some things I've witnessed and kind of been gathering. And I want to give you things that if you want, you can take these things and do them yourself. So I'm going to dive right in. Can you see my slides okay? All right. The first thing some of the speakers have done today is they've shared. Let's see if I can get back down here. There we go. They've shared a little bit about themselves. So I could tell you about my background as a cultural consultant, that kind of thing. But here's my home team. So this is my home team. There's that little girl standing at my waist there. So I'm the guy in the tan shirt, and that little gal in the gray shirt is a little gal I picked up on a trip to England, and she agreed to marry me. And then some of the other people there are kids and spouses and grandkids now. So there's the home team. And I want to talk about something that I work a lot with a service desk and help desk professionals here in the States. And again, I've been a guest of SDI over on the Big Island over there. But there's all these virtual meetings now, and so all these chapters and all these groups want to gather. And so this group said, "Hey, Kirk, we do a virtual chapter meeting." So we've been before there was COVID, we've been doing a virtual chapter for people that don't belong to a big city chapter. And would you be our guest presenter? And I said, sure. What do you want to talk about? And they go, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to talk about and share ideas that I've been picking up people do on Zoom. And I said, do you think that would interest your people? Anyway, they had record registrations, and it wasn't because of my name, because I'm not famous. It was because of the content. People were looking for things they could do to spice up their virtual meetings. And so it's my intent right now in the next 12 minutes to dump on you some of those ideas. Okay, so we're going to go. So hang on. So background would be, this is a picture of team building old school. This is in-person team building. And in the States, we like to call it non-cheesy team building. This is a picture. I got invited to China, to Hong Kong. They're trying to develop what they call super skills or mega skills, but we call it emotional intelligence and resilience over here. And I got to be a part of a team that went over to share ideas about how to do that. And it was a wonderful thing. And this is another activity. I think this one also could tie in with a little bit of social distancing. You're at the end of a 6-foot string trying to keep this ball in a small bull ring. I have an association with some of the top team builders in the world. I'm not one of them. I just happen to know a guy. And because I know this guy, I get invited sometimes to be a part of these major events. And he said in February, he said, Kirk, he said, I do everything. 100% of what I do is with people touching, and it's very kinetic, very engaging. It's very in-person team building. He said, but all that's gone now. And he said, I don't know what's coming back. He said, would you like to be a part of a group? We're going to get on a webinar, or we're going to get on a Zoom call every couple of weeks, and we're going to practice and figure out how can we take what we did as team building, bringing people together, helping them feel connected. How can we do that in a virtual world? And we're just going to practice with each other in a safe place. And we just learned about safety from our last speaker. So I said, yeah, I'm in. And so then I began to kind of be a part of that. So this is what Mr. Zoom said, the CEO. He said, in December, there was about 10 million daily users, December of 2019. But boy, 2020 just changed things. And all of a sudden, the usership, the daily usership of Zoom or as one virtual platform just skyrocketed. So it's not going away. It's a big part of our lives. So let's make it better. So I wondered what other people were doing. Think about it, from the last year, if you total up all the Zoom calls or all the virtual meetings you've now been in, if you're doing 20 or 30 a day or 20 or 30 a week, that means you've already been in several hundred of these meetings. Now, if we had a shared chat, I would say, what's the coolest thing you've seen? And from the 100 people on this webinar right now with SDI, we could build a list. And if we could unpack that list of all the coolest things you've seen, we could write a book about ways to make virtual meetings better, more meaningful, more engaging, and some of the things we've been talking about today. So this is one of the first things I saw. I told you about showing up and music was playing. I showed up on this one team call, and while you were waiting for your teammates to show up, they said, hey, while you're waiting to join the meeting, type in what was your favorite childhood toy. And all of a sudden the chat window blew up, and we were learning about our team members' favorite childhood toy. And sometimes you'd go, oh man, I had that too. And that creates connection, and connection creates culture, builds trust, and some of those great things. That's just one idea. I thought, well, that was cool. Another meeting I was in, they kick off every meeting with the meme of the month or something cool, something that's trending on social media. So this is when social distancing was a big deal, and it was being introduced and people were trying to get it. And so they said, what's the coolest social distancing thing you've seen lately? And so this guy said, world champion. I don't know if anyone's watched this Out of Touch film by Kevin James. He did that back in April, I think. And it's just great. And then I Can Social Distance. This kid on YouTube took the song, a Disney Hercules song, and then modified it to social distance. And they actually played it on a team meeting, and we were laughing out loud. And what a great way to set the tone for the meeting. So it got some of the stress out. We acknowledged this is the reality, and then we dove in and did some of the transactional stuff. But at the same time, we were doing some transformational stuff as well. This was really popular in the States. This was the #1 meme in the United States the couple days after the election, because in every previous presidential election we've had in the United States, we knew who the winner was the night of or the next day. But it was very, very different this election cycle. So they start every meeting with, hey, what's the meme of the month or the meme of the week? I like this day in history. So I got this one. They every time they have a meeting, they go on this day in history, and they just start off with something soft, and they just kind of, and you can type in this day in history, and you go to a website, and it gives you things to put in there. So this was a September 30th, but I did one for today. I built this for today. So on this day in history, in 1826, The Last of the Mohicans was published. On this day, singer-songwriter Karen Carpenter died. Disney released the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and in 2004 is when Facebook launched this day in history. But what a great idea to just drop in a virtual meeting to kind of have a little bit of fun. This has been something I really enjoyed. If you want to have not just drop something in for a quick brain teaser, but you want to have a discussion, what are you reading right now? What's a book that you've read during your COVID retreat? Are you reading more or less? What's something you're really engaged in? What's a book we should all read? And just just create a discussion around discovery and personal growth and development. And all of a sudden you have that book in common, and why'd you love that? And these conversations will continue offline. Man, I was really intrigued by that book you were talking about in our group chat. Tell me a little bit more about that. One group always starts off with a quote, and then someone makes a comment on the quote, or they have a group comment. What do you think about this quote? What's the best thing you've learned about kind of managing your worry, or being more mindful around things that cause anxiety in your life? And so they kick off with a quote. They have a short discussion that's relevant to something that they're trying to address as a team, or they're just doing some inspirational quote. But it becomes a tradition that they do, and people look forward to it. It just becomes a place marker. So this is, by the way, everything that I'm sharing, every slide, some of these are activity slides, and we don't have the time to do them, nor does this GoWebinar platform really allow us to interact in that way. But this slide deck is made available to you, so it's in a PDF format. So any activity I describe here, you're welcome to go back and practice and play with your teams on these. This was a statistical treasure hunt idea that this team builder friend of mine came up with. And so we went into breakout rooms, and then we just tried to come up with the highest score based on who had done what, who had been where. Really fun. The number of countries this group has visited, the number of people born in the same month. And all of a sudden in this breakout session, now these 4 or 5 people are interacting, and someone's a spokesperson, and someone's kind of keeping a tally, and then we're coming back with a score to share. And then we're highlighting some of the stories that we heard. And no way, you've been to that many countries. And all of a sudden now we get to highlight a person on the team. And that's always a bit of fun too. This was something I got from a team. They just come up with a big question. And so every time they have their weekly staff meeting, they just pick a question. So the first person, whoever's leading the team meeting, says, the question today is, what's the most unusual thing you've ever eaten? The entire team then enters it in chat, or if it's a small team, they unmic and share. But all of a sudden, everyone's engaged, everyone's participating. It's not just a presentation, it's facilitation of a discussion, discovery, and that's the kind of stuff that builds teams, builds trust. What have you ever done that you never thought you would? What's the last time you were truly surprised? Who inspires you? Just great stuff. This is kind of a puzzle challenge thing. This is a problem solving thing. This took us 12 minutes, but the purpose of the team was collaboration, innovation, and problem solving. And all of a sudden there was an activity that we did. Rather than talk about it and have a static presentation, we actually did it. And then the presentation kind of built on and pulled some of the principles that we used to solve the problem. And it really was a really interesting team building activity. This was kind of fun. The challenge was to come up with a avatar that wasn't something that you pulled off of the virtual platform. And so this guy built the Lego avatar. And if you look closely, he then built a contraption to hang it in front of the camera on his laptop or on his computer screen. And this really inspired his team. All of a sudden, this became something that went popular, and everyone began to do it. And so people began to submit their different things that they did and came up with different ideas. And then this got put on Twitter, and all of a sudden there was 20,000 people responded to it, and it really started something. It was kind of fun. But was this original? No, this was actually a very old idea. Anyone on this call that's old enough to remember the Jetsons, here's the Jetsons. Long before there was anything like a video camera, right? She was doing virtual meetings, and she wasn't ready, so she put up a fake avatar to get through the meeting way back in the day, 1962. Another team has themes, and I think I thought I heard Mr. Jackson talk about this, where he said his teams can create a theme. So they had different themes, and so they have a Star Wars theme, and everyone had to come up to the meeting with their own green screen Star Wars background. I was on another meeting where we would ran through themes, and the first one in the chat that could guess the background. So we're not doing that right now, but just guess, what movie is this from? What movie is this from? You can see I'm a little bit of a Star Wars nerd here, but there's nerds on every team, and all of a sudden the nerd is like shining bright right now. What movie is this from? Yeah, WALL-E. Yeah, WALL-E. This is another Pixar, I think. This is Brave. Most people recognize this right away. This is from the animated the Pixar movie Up. This is Edna Mole from The Incredibles. Most people get this one. This is the US version of Office. This is from there. This is my background when I do a lot of meetings. I use this one. Now look at this background. This was a wallpaper. I joined one meeting, and instead of typing in our favorite toy, the chat was said, hey, look, there's a letter. And what the presenter had done is just put this as a welcome screen. And then people began to say, hey, wait, oh, the alphabet's in there. It's a hidden picture. Where's the D? And all of a sudden the chat blew up as people engaged and talked about, hey, where's this letter? Oh, I found the W. And there was this, all of a sudden there was this non-facilitated, very inviting, engaging experience. And people just kind of leaned into it and had a lot of fun with it. I just want to run through a few more now to kind of give you an idea and a flavor, and then I want to wrap this thing up because I just have a few minutes left. So this was a series of slides that I collected that I saw in a presentation. And again, the chat was blowing up on this. You gotta solve. These are we call them Wordles. There's probably a different name for them over there in Europe, but three blind mice, tuna fish, good copy, misunderstanding between friends, count the triangles, which one doesn't belong. Now, again, none of these are world changing, but if you can imagine kind of doing something like this every time you meet, and all of a sudden now I expect to have some type of a brain teaser. I expect to have some type of a team challenge. I expect to have some type of, oh my, I wonder what we're going to do this week. And it becomes a fun little element that you can add into. And these are, I call them culture builders, because they're intentionally designed to build culture, create connections, build community. Which tank will fill up first? I really worked hard on this, and we did this in a breakout session, and it was a big fail. Answer at the end. Here's one that was just really fun. I wanted you guys to have this. I thought if I could give you something, I want to give you this. So this was one for breakout sessions. So you put in the breakout session, say, listen, we're going to put you in a breakout session of 4 or 5 people. We want you to solve the sequence. So discover and solve the sequence. And we went our breakout session, and man, 4 or 5 people, we really leaned into this thing. We tried to sort it out. We go, okay, well, that's a 9 and that's an 8. This is some type of a number thing. Well, Pentagon is 5. Queen, I don't know if that's 4, but wait, the shifter's 4, dynamic duo. And we just ran down the road with this thing, and our group didn't do well. But we came back, and 5 or 6 groups reassembled, and a couple groups had solved it. And they said, oh, it's a suit of cards. Right? There's an ace, there's a king, there's queen, and all of a sudden you can go through an entire suit. You go ace all the way through, and I'm like, oh, but what is that album? The Styx album. Oh, someone knew. It's Pieces of 8 is the title of the album, and it was a really fun problem-solving activity, and people really got engaged with it. Scavenger hunts are really big. You've probably done one of these. Hey, everyone grab something blue as quick as you can. Now we've got this whole panorama of all these little windows in Zoom. We see everyone's face, and the first person that can grab something green or something alive or something wet or something old or something new, right, and show it, they get points, and then they get a gift card or something like that. So scavenger hunts, there's so many ways to do that. This was an introduction box. Anyone who's been on a virtual meeting and thought, I want everyone to take a minute on the virtual meeting to introduce themselves, and all of a sudden you've lost 17 minutes of the meeting because there was no structure around that. So my friend solved this by saying, I want people to introduce themselves, but I want to keep it to 15 seconds or less. So he gave them some structure and created a slide that says, let's use this to introduce ourselves to the team. Well, okay, my time is up. I think there's a lot of purpose. There's a way to be intentional with these activities. They're not just fun. Meetings are there for transaction. We transact business. We transact accountability. We transact progress reports. That's transactional stuff. But every meeting, every time we gather, a gathering is a strengthening, or at least an opportunity to strengthen. And that's the transformational element. That's where we can take the team as it is and say, can we become more together? And we generally do that by learning more about each other and learning more with each other and learning more from each other. And I believe all these activities can help facilitate that. So I say create traditions, establish traditions in your virtual meetings, just like you do in your in-person meetings. In those traditions, be intentional and do something that allows people to connect and reconnect and strengthen connections. Do something that builds skills, that builds confidence, because confidence builds culture. That's that safety aspect that our previous speaker talked about. Help people grow and become better. And then create leadership. And again, Mr. Jackson talked about this, as well as Sarah Wilkes this morning. Don't feel like there's all this pressure on you to lead the huddle, to lead the virtual meeting. In other words, right, model what you want it to look like, establish some parameters, and then give it to your people and watch it grow, watch it become more. Watch your people become more, watch your team become more, watch your culture become more, and have fun doing it. And then finally, I wanted to include that if you don't do anything, well, that's lame. So we've got to lead people through change with a commitment to take action. It's what we do that we find the power. It's what we change ourselves and the change that we lead that brings about a more positive culture. And so those are ideas, things that you can do. I wanted to give you the answer to the tank, so that I want you to know that's included in your slide deck that they're going to post in the chat. And with that said, I yield my time. Thanks so much, SCI.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kirk. Fantastic. Really fantastic. I'm sure if the guys, our listeners, get a chance to download that, they will have some fantastic opportunities to really connect people through a very tough time, I think it's fair to say at the minute. So I loved all that. I loved those connecting activities. I love the Lego stuff. That was really creative. Right. When we talk about creative, didn't we? We talked about creativity this morning. That was really creative. I think I've got one question we'll ask. I think many of the guys listening may think, well, yeah, that's all great, but how do we get the time to invest in these fun activities to make the team better when we've got other stuff to do? I may drop that one on you. And what I'd also like to ask as well, there's one question which is very specific. It's about an individual personalities in team. This one talks about an introverted nihilist. And how do you get the best out of that person if that person isn't giving you any mitigating circumstances? How does that impact on the team? So yeah, two things. Where do you get the time to do all this stuff? How do you manage that? And what if you've got a team member that's really challenging? How do you deal with that?
No, I love that, and these are both great questions. So thanks for asking. So let's do the second question first. I think Andrew spoke to this. I think Sarah spoke to this. And I think one of our other speakers spoke to this. Respect people's personality. In other words, and you actually spoke to this when you said, we often project ourselves. In other words, so we value participation. And we think participation is important. And then if we're participating, we want participation because we think that's what you do. And then someone doesn't, and we personalize that somehow. And then we attack their introvertism or their shyness, and we give it a different label, like, well, they just want to, they're cynical, they're non-players. Well, no, maybe not at all. Susan Cain wrote the book, The Power, Quiet, How Introverts Are Quietly Leading the World. Celebrate your introvert, respect their choice not to participate. I would rather have someone be shy, not participate, than have someone over there dropping cynical bombs and making sarcastic comments and saying, hey, this is silly. And so that's a toxic personality, but a quiet personality, hey, don't be affronted if they don't participate. On a one-on-one, I might say, listen, I respect that you're less outgoing than I am, but to create that ultimate safe culture, we all need to get to know each other. So I just encourage you to try and allow yourself to get people to allow people to get to know you, but that's a one-on-one coaching session. That's not, I wouldn't want to call them out in front of a team because that's the opposite of the safety thing that we've already discussed today. So I think don't personalize it, learn to connect with it and learn to respect it. And again, that's very different from someone who's toxic. And I think that would be a different discussion. The second question is, how do you make the time for this? And I go, wait, hold on a second. What kind of time do you think this takes? Any one of the things I shared were a simple 1, 2, or 3 minute element of a virtual meeting. And if you can't dedicate 5 or 10% of your virtual meeting to building culture and building relationships and doing the transformative stuff, then you're going to continue to have some cultural stagnation or barriers that are not necessary. These things don't take a lot of time, but if we'll take the time that it takes, it'll take less time, because if we don't, we've got to always invest. It's like some people want to have this annual team building retreat and they go away for a full day. Well, okay, does that work at the gym? Can I work out 1 day a week one day a year at the gym and be fit? Can I stop smoking 1 day a year and get my lungs healthy again? No, it's the things we do. Someone already mentioned atomic habits or tiny habits, that TED Talk. It's the little things we do consistently that can bring about the results that we desire. And I think the concepts that I'm learning from these other teams, these virtual teams, and all these little things they do are exactly the tool to help us do that.
And do you know what's interesting? It's interesting that I found through, I've been lucky enough to work, lucky enough to work from home for 7 years now, right? So this hasn't been a great shift for me, but I've watched other people come to terms with working from home, and it's not easy. It took me 3 years to work from home. Seriously, it took me 3 years to come to terms with not being in a team local to me, right, and a connected team as well. So it's not easy at all. So I think when when we talk about some of these ideas, I've certainly seen them as some of the newer generation ideas. I've seen the newer generation, that maybe the Y gens, who are more in tune with this, who are more willing to play. And I mean that in a very positive way, more willing to play with this kind of stuff. And maybe some of the older generation, less so, because they come from a different generation. They come where governance, control, process ownership, that's the important stuff, not this. So that I'm really interested, and I will continue to be interested in that demographic change. I think it's by 2025 we'll see 75% of the workforce as Y-Gen. So that'll be really interesting to watch, I think.
I absolutely agree. I took a look at this. Again, my two recent experiences were, I said, okay, I'll present this content, ideas to make your Zoom meetings more intriguing, engaging. And then I enrolled in one myself. I said, I want to see what this guy's talking about. 250 people enrolled in this guy's class. 250 people said, I want to know more of things I can do to spice up or bring a little more life and engagement to my virtual meetings. And I was like, there's a strong interest out there. And the people that were leading the meeting were younger. The people that were attending the meeting were older.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very interesting. And one thing before we close, I asked that question about the time, because every time we do this, every time we do these more human connective stuff, the first question usually to come from the audience, and we haven't had it with this one, which I'm delighted, to be honest, is, how have I got the time to actually do any of this? You know what I mean? It's the first one, not looking into it and thinking, well, actually, how do we fit this in? Can we? Let's do it. How am I going to? And that's why I asked it. So it's really interesting. We could talk.
One closing comment.
Sorry,
I think Andrew said this wonderfully. Andrew said they actually did an additional meeting. And a lot of organizations in the States are doing this. They're doing an additional meeting. They're doing a happy hour. So they're people, that water cooler need that people have to feel and connect. And it's not mandatory, but it's an opportunity for people to, people are blown away by the number of people that are coming after work, logging back in to be with their team in a social environment, because they have that need. And we've got to do it.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you. Always fantastic. Always